pieces, and I love that I get to play on the whiteboards. So we just talked about the cap rate. It is a ratio described as a percentage, but now I'm going to talk more about the 1% rule. I paused up there for a second because I don't use cap rate as much as many investors do, and I haven't found the value in it. I just think there's too many other variables that are more important to me. But I have my 1% rule. Now, with that said, none of my properties currently are achieving this 1% rule, and I also don't do fixes and flips. I do buy and holds, and I buy in pre-construction mostly. And a lot of my properties have taken a little bit of a hit with COVID, or all my short-term rentals have taken a hit just because people can't get to the property. It's not in the United States. However, my long-term rentals are actually doing fine, and I actually got to increase the rents within the last 18 months by about 10%, which was lovely from my side being the landlord. Not great if you're a renter, but that's why you want to figure out how to buy a house. So I just want to describe the 1% rule a little bit. A lot of different people talk about it, and that's the fixers and flippers. They want to try to do that, or the fix and then rent out, and then the rents and repeat the bird method, and a lot of those type groups, and I love that. I'm just not seeing those options in the places I want to live and where I want to have my properties. And so it's one of those things, the value chain, about what works for you. I know how to get this 1%, but I don't want to deal with properties in those areas, or they're too far, or it just doesn't work out, which is more of like the time value that I think is very important. So with that 1% rule, just to throw it all out here on the beautiful whiteboard, a $500,000 home should achieve $500,000 in rent per month. So this 1% is basically the rent divided by the home value, or the monthly income divided by the cost of the home. And so what I'm looking at, and I wanted to show you or talk about a few options that I'm looking at right now. Boulder, I'm always looking at options in Boulder. I very rarely find them. Used to find them in the early 2000s a lot more than I'm seeing now. Now it's just, I think we're in a time where there's just a lot more real estate investors, and the education's coming out, so people have more information, and they can, I think a lot more people are doing this because it's a tried and true method on how to generate wealth and have money work for you, and build your own wealth with OPM, which is other people's money, and that's the best money to build your wealth on. So Boulder, just for an example, I'm seeing approximately $1 million properties, which if you're in Boulder, $1 million doesn't get you that much. But if you were in Texas, that gets you a mega mansion with 2 guest houses and a pool. This will get you not very much. You're lucky if you get a single family home for $1 million that isn't built in the 70s, that needs to have pretty significant renovations, except there's some exceptions. Gun Barrel has some nice ones at around $800,000 to $900,000 that were built in the 90s, but anywhere closer to campus, you're closer to this number, and it's going to be a 1,500 to 2,000 square foot home that probably needs some deep-rooted renovations. But anyway, so what I'm seeing is rough numbers. There are exceptions to these rules, but roughly $1 million gets you about $5,000 of rent. Some properties do less. I haven't really seen any that do more. Maybe, I've seen a few houses near the hill that they say they're worth between like $850 and $950, and they're renting for about $5,000 to $5,500. But those are kind of one-offs, but just kind of the general trend, and that actually is achieving 8.5%. So that's half of what we're going for with the 1% rule, which I wouldn't say is bad. It just depends on what you want. Like, I'm talking to a lot of people that have, we need to talk about their goals, and their kids happen to be in college, so in graduate school, tends to be graduate school, parents, some undergraduate students as well. I was lucky enough to have my parents buy a unit for me while I was an undergrad at CU 20 years ago. All right, Lauren's still here. Now we're on part 3 of the 1% rule, kind of how I like to judge some properties. So we've talked about Boulder, and I'm not seeing what I want to see in Boulder, and that's mostly because the market value is going up so high, a little bit higher than rents, even though rents are sky high, guys. They've been pretty stagnant in Boulder the last 12 to 18 months, I think mostly thanks to COVID. COVID has not, it's kind of caused rents to stay the same or potentially decrease a little bit, whereas housing prices have gone up at least 10%. So the ratios are off a little bit right now. So now if we actually go to Superior, this is actually, I'm under contract with a unit in Superior right now, just south of Boulder. And the reason being is I'm really impressed with the downtown Superior business plan and the plans, and I actually went under contract on the unit 2 days after all the permitting got approved, and that permitting had been delayed by years. So that's one of the important things when you buy pre-construction, or I bought pre-construction, because it can save a little bit of money sometimes, but you're taking a bigger risk. So it's all about risk reward, and it's with real estate investing, it's more of a dynamic system, and there's not a one size fits all. You have to figure out what works for you and what numbers work for you. I have learned by trial and error, and I've learned some expensive lessons. I've also gotten lucky a few times, and where I should have learned lessons, I didn't. But then I tend to learn them later down the road. Anyway, I'm really happy with what's going on in downtown Superior right now, and that's actually what I'm looking at with one of my units. Will be it'll cost just shy of $700,000, but for math's sake, I threw $700,000 out there, and rents right now, or I think will be at $4,000. They're about $3,500 right now, but we're in a construction zone, and it's muddy and gross, and none of the commercial development is there yet, or not much of it, other than the ice skating rink and some medical offices. So we are going to have an uptick in rent, even though I did say rents are down. I think the rents will pop in downtown Superior just when more things become available, and especially because of the age of items in Boulder. People are going to be more inclined to Superior, and Superior, for whatever reason, hasn't, well, we've got reasons, has not popped like Louisville and Lafayette, and then just if you're talking about the Boulder surrounding areas. And so even with that, I mean, you know, the Boulder one, it just requires a lot of money to even play ball in Boulder. Superior, actually average home price in Superior is about $750,000. Boulder's is over $1 million. And so I like the luxury rentals, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So $700,000, approximately $4,000, and I think that those will be numbers for 2022, which is, well, once more construction gets done and the unit will actually be done. But I'm still only looking at, you know, about 1% higher, or part of 1% higher, so I'm at 0.57. There are some better ones right now, or actually the cheapest units that are no longer available in downtown Superior, but those were at just over $500,000, and those rents are around $3,200, or that's what they're currently renting for. I do think they're going to go up when the homes stop being in mud pits. And I actually really wanted to buy into these, but I couldn't. I could only buy one at a time, and so I chose this one. But anyway, that was, you know, there's a lot more that goes into it than just numbers sometimes, especially when you're smaller like me, and, you know, life, you kind of have to, you know, balance life, risk, reward in life. So those numbers was slightly higher at the 0.58, but for a small percentage like that, you know, my time value, and actually just kind of my values were off a little bit, and so these numbers didn't, that like slight percentage didn't get me to want to do the 550 over the 700, and that's actually because I'm going to live there for at least a year, and so that's just, you know, and these units are bigger. So that's what helped flip it for this one. And then I'm also seeing nice things in Aurora. Actually, I'll finish up with what I was going to say about Superior. I think, so the Boulder County is particular, and they're very strict on permitting. And so I was hesitant to go into Superior, actually invest in Superior until all of the permitting was done. So if you're considering doing a new construction or pre-construction, make sure you vet the builder, because this is, so I'm in with this. All right, still talking about Superior and downtown Superior in particular, and getting in at the pre-construction phase. And I think it's very, very important to get in while with a builder that has plenty of cash flow, that is cash positive, and that's kind of hard to vet sometimes because builders aren't going to tell you if they're in financial trouble. But went in with the second builder. The first builder went out, built, I don't even know how many homes, maybe 50 homes. And then there's 300 about right now. And I don't even know how many are going to be there. I think at least 800, or the next phase has at least 500 homes. But don't quote me on that. I might be slightly off with those numbers. But I was confident in the downtown Superior pre-construction because, one, I bought in 2 days after all of the commercial permitting had been done and the construction has started. That's another thing. Construction needs to start. Just because they have the permitting doesn't mean they always start, and in not times like this, because all the builders are really flush with cash because so many people are buying new constructions. But we have to be careful for what happens next, because this boom isn't going to happen forever, and real estate is cyclic, and so this high right now, it's not going to last forever. How long? We have no idea. But we do have to be prepared if there is a downturn, which is why I chose the builder that I did end up choosing, just from a stability standpoint and the cash that I believe that builder has. And then also the permitting with the commercial, because I think a lot of this will actually go up. I could see that going to 5,000 once all the commercial is done. And the reason with this, I'm making a lot of assumptions, and I could be wrong because I haven't seen it yet. Now I do see this. This is for the 5,500 or the just over 500,000. I am seeing rents like that, and there's about 7 of those, so I am seeing real numbers on that one. I'm guessing a little bit on my unit, but I do know the $1 million houses there are renting for 5,000. So I am using some real rental numbers, but I'm kind of making some assumptions here, and I'm actually going off of some projects that were done in Georgia. So I am making a lot of assumptions here. So don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to make them as intelligent as I can. And I've seen projects similar to this have great success in Georgia I think they're called the Avenues or Avalon. I want to call them, it starts with an A. Those projects have gone really well. The houses, I've watched those for over 10 years. I think they started to go in Georgia. It was right after I left for Colorado, so it was right in the early 2000s they started making those projects, and now I don't even know how many they are. I'm aware of 3 that are doing really well, and the home values have gone very well, but the rents have actually increased at a much higher rate than the property value, and that's actually what I'm looking for. So one of the reasons why I also was okay with this ratio, because it's not a static environment, it's very dynamic and it's constantly changing. And so I think sometimes, like with the rigidity of the cap rate, there's so many other factors in what goes into buying properties. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But over the long term, well, I'm starting to be more right than wrong now. This, more than a decade in on my investing career. So the next couple areas that I'm looking at in Colorado is one, Aurora. I'm seeing the best rates right now. Some people don't like Aurora. I actually like Aurora. I just see a lot of potential there, and I've seen a lot of positive change, making change. But you also have to consider, I have a perspective from, I've been in Boulder on and off since 2001. I've also lived in the city of Atlanta, and I've seen the Beltline project, which would be, crippling not awesomeness in the city of Atlanta, where Denver's got nothing compared to what Atlanta has with some up-and-coming areas. Aurora's not even on the same level as some of the projects that I've seen, and I've actually been shocked at how well some of those projects have gone. I'm still actually shocked. I did not see those coming, but anyway, back to Aurora. I'm seeing the best percentages. If you want to get, the higher cap rate, the, closer to the 1% and not really do any fixing and flipping, light stuff, but nothing major, Aurora. And I'm seeing you can get for about $200,000, and right now investors are dominating and they are pushing buyers off like it's not a fair playing field, and I'm not saying right, wrong, or otherwise. All right, let's chat Aurora. So keep chatting on Aurora. I think we're on part 4 now. So for about $200,000, I'm seeing rents about $1,700, between about $1,500 and $1,900. So I'm just kind of guessing here. Just depends. So you might actually be able to get that 1%, especially if you're willing to rip out gross carpet and put in that nice vinyl flooring, which is pretty. I mean, I consider that low maintenance as long as I'm not redoing cabinets or ripping out a wall. I usually be okay with that. Replacing flooring or painting, those are all in my wheelhouse. And if I can get more money for my dollar and I can get that ROI, my return on investment, I'm all for it. And that takes very little effort because I also put a great deal of effort on, a great bit on my time value, and my time is valuable. So I want to make sure the ROI or the return on investment is worth it. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities in Aurora. Some people poo-poo it. I like Aurora, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for people that want to get into real estate investing. With that said, you need to do your homework. You need to check the surrounding areas. You need to check the areas at night. You need to do all of the maintenance, like stuff in Boulder. I kind of consider Boulder a bubble, always have. I still think it's a bubble. Even Boulder County, I think it's still kind of a bubble. So, and you don't always have to do as much homework. You should, because I think there are some places in Boulder that are actually stuck in time and not really appreciating at the rate that others are. But I can talk about that more. It's just what I've seen over the last 20 years. They just, these units built, I think most of them were built in the 80s. But they're not appreciating, and it's like they're stuck in time. Even when you renovate them, the rents are kind of stagnant, and rents are increasing a little bit, but the property values are they're stagnant and increasing at about half or a third the rate as everywhere else in Boulder. So when you work with me, I can tell you those areas to watch out for. But next is Denver. Denver's also on my good list right now because I'm seeing the $700,000 zone, which that's kind of my zone right there, is the 700 or the 5 to 700 zone, and I will talk about why I picked that a little bit later. And that's just more of time value for me, just where I am in my life from my investing, and then also it has a lot to do with evictions, and I have a hard time doing these. Emotionally, they take a big toll, and I'd rather just not do them anymore. But that's because I've kind of graduated out, and I just have a hard time having to evict people, which you can't actually do right now. But in the $700,000 zone, you start to get into the luxury section, and people have places to go, and they can still get evicted, but they have somewhere to go. Here, you're kind of already at a point where there's not as many options as the luxury rentals. Anyway, so Denver, I'm seeing nice townhomes. I'm actually looking at townhomes in Denver, and these are townhomes in Superior also. I'm seeing rents between $3,500 and $4,000, so I just went with $3,700, and that's about 0.53. I'm a big fan of Denver, always have been, and I think this number goes down the closer you get to 16th Street Mall, and then it kind of spreads out from there. And then, when you get to Denver, closer to the Aurora, you're able to get higher numbers. But you kind of leave the luxury zone, and then you have your pockets, in Denver, and then Aurora of luxury apartments. But just kind of the two different mentalities I've seen here, or the two different rents, and I would say these are completely different. This is kind of a starter investment where you're going to get your best numbers, and so if you can rinse and repeat and do that 20 times, you're golden and you're going to get better numbers than right here. But then you better be able to put that time into it, and my time means more to me than this number. And then my emotional health with evictions, and because it tends to be a lot of single parents, and that just doesn't go over well for me. So I tend to avoid them. And then I also wanted to throw in just Atlanta. I also do investing in the state of Georgia. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the liability is good from my side. Not that it's just I can protect myself a little bit better than with some, I'd say professional bad renters, because this is not like... All right, let's get back to Atlanta. I think we're on like part 5 right now. So I like Atlanta, and I was briefly talking about the liability issues, and I can protect myself a lot better with my properties from, I would say, professional bad renters. And I'm not talking students, I'm not talking 90% of what you're going to get, maybe 95%. I'm talking like the professional bad renters that I've had, that they're going to come in, they're going to potentially trash your place, and you're not going to be able to remove them. And I have a lot more rights in Atlanta than I do in the state of Colorado. But that is kind of a one-off, and it's not normal to get that. But when you do get one, it's not fun. So some of my rentals in Atlanta, actually, this is one of my rentals right now. So these are real numbers. These are not guesstimate numbers. The house value, we're going to go with $800,000 just for the sake of argument. There's a lot of argument in that number right now. But just if I'm going to shoot a number, we're going to go with $800,000, and we're going to leave it at that. The unit's currently rented at $6,000 a month, and so I'm getting a 0.75. And I've owned this unit since 2016. So that's another reason why my number is a little bit higher, because when I first got it, the rents were at about $5,000. And now they have moved up to $6,000. So I do have 5 years under my belt on that, which can also help you get this number up, because, well, what you paid for it is going to be the same no matter how long you have it, but the rents will steadily increase. And so your 1% rule can happen over time. This is about 5 years where it's been a lot better. But just when you're figuring out what you're going to do, where you're going to invest, I don't have all the answers. I make plenty of mistakes. I'm just a human being that's been able to create a multi-million-dollar rental portfolio. Some days are better than others. I am getting squashed with one of my short-term rentals right now, and why I think it's so important to diversify yourself. Even though there's kind of arguments right now, it's like do what you do and do what you do well, and do that one thing, which, you know, maybe that's it, and maybe I'm just not a short-term rental person. And it goes back to my time value, which I value my time very, very much. And I'm not big enough to have a full-on team yet. And so a lot of it, I do have teams, but everyone's a contractor at this point. So I don't have anyone full-time other than in Honduras. And in the Caribbean, I do have 3 people working on that property. But in the U.S., I don't have any full-time people. I have all consultants and contractors, and I actually have a realtor team with a different brokerage, because I think that they are the best. And so I use who is the best, and they're an amazing team, and I actually pay their full rate. I don't try to get my referral or reduce it because I'm a realtor. The reason is they do an amazing job, and I'm happy to pay for it when it's my time value. This is probably one of my most important things. This is my husband, his cash flow. But good thing we keep most of the investments separate, so he can really focus on cash flow, which I do care about. But I care about the time value more. And then also what I think is important with Colorado right now is also to understand appreciation. This Georgia house, it's an anomaly. So we're just going to remove appreciation even from any ballparks, but I can talk about functional obsolescence with you at another time on lessons on what not to do as a landlord. And then also, you know, your loan information. Right now, rates, I think they were at like as low as 2.5%, maybe slightly higher for, I think it's now at around 3%. But depending on, 15 your loan terms, which when you're an investor, you can be a little bit more flexible with this, which is nice. And then any type of goals, like having a kid in college and wanting to just give them a place to stay so they don't have to move. And then you care more about this appreciation. And Boulder can be great for that. Even though you're getting low numbers, you're getting that appreciation. So if you guys ever have any questions or anything on investing, I don't always know the answers. I'm not a financial advisor. I am an accredited investor. I have a multi-million-dollar rental portfolio, and I'm a licensed realtor in the state of Colorado. So I don't always have all the answers, but I can at least point you in the right direction, or I can tell you why I do these things. Sometimes there's a good reason for it. Sometimes there's a bad reason for it. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. That was about 30 minutes worth of Lauren, beautiful mind, numbers, talking about the 1% rule, a little bit about the cap rate ratio as a percentage, and some, how many is it? 5 options that I was looking at or am looking at in the state of Colorado and the state of Georgia. So if you ever have any questions, my door is always open.